All right. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our uh, October Rep Pick session. Today, we will be focused on key drop-in titles, most of which maybe became available in October or late September, as well as titles that you might have missed that we feel are worth a second look. As always, you have the three trade reps for IPG with you today. I'm Amy Dispinnett, covering the Eastern States.
I'm Travis Hale. I cover Central States, and I'm just going to drop the link to the collection in the chat here.
And I'm Brianna Spiegel, and I have the Western States.
And we've got a couple things to show you before we dive into the collection, but just a quick reminder, please stay muted throughout the presentation. We do have a chat, which we will monitor and do our best to answer the questions as we go. And we usually have a little bit of time at the end to open it up for, voiced out loud questions or comments if there are any. So with that, we'll dive right in. And maybe, there we go. So
All right, talking about drop-in titles, we've had quite a few Stephen Graham Jones titles as drop-ins lately. These are all reissues of previous novels and stories from Stephen Graham Jones being reissued by Open Road Media. And if you're not familiar with him yet, Stephen Graham Jones has written 40 novel, more than 40 even seems low. I would be surprised if that's it. But he's also received numerous awards, and he's really a big voice in the horror section now, especially with Indigenous horror. So out in October, we had Zombie Bake Off, The Long Trial of Nolan Dugatti, and 3 Miles Past. And those all came out in October. And then coming out in December, we have After the People, Lights Have Gone Off, as well as It Came from Del Rio and Sterling City. So we've got lots of Stephen Graham Jones backlist that everyone's very excited about, and we are too.
And also wanted to highlight a special that we're running on The Perfect Marriage. This is one of our best-selling titles. I think in terms of like money, it might be our best-selling title. We've sold over 1 million copies of this. It's a juicy, twisty, and utterly addictive thriller that will keep you turning pages. You won't see the ending coming. We guarantee that. So the promo will be valid from it's currently running. It's running from today until the 20th of next month. And you'll get a 5% discount in addition to your regular discount for every copy that you order. We don't have any minimums on this. You can just add this to your regular front list or backlist order. So as long as your order meets our $100 standard net minimum, you're good to go. We will accept as many orders as you'd like to place for this title within the promo dates. And do want to note that these orders need to come directly to your rep, either me, Amy, or Brianna, to be applied. And I just dropped in the link to that title here in Edelweiss.
it's a twisty one for sure, and Geneva Rose is definitely kind of having a moment. So it's a good time to stock up for the holidays with this very, very popular title. All right, and then last but not least, before we dive into the collection, just a reminder of our Fall 24 rep specials. So these are the front list and backlist specials that you can take advantage of when you submit your orders directly to your rep. We have our 2024 top shelf special. That's a $200 net minimum order of titles labeled as top shelf titles in our collections. We'll get a +5 discount up to 50% total, net 60 dating, and free freight. And that can be any mix of those top shelf label titles. We have the fall front list special, which is a $150 net minimum order of, again, any mix of front list titles, and that will receive a +3% discount up to a 48% total discount. And similarly, we have the backlist special, which is the $150 net minimum of assorted backlist titles. So essentially anything that isn't fall 2024 will receive a +3% discount, net 60 dating, and free freight. So always good for these types of orders. It is best to send to the rep as well, so we can be sure to apply the kind of internal promo codes to make sure we're getting you the best discounts possible for those types of orders. So With that, we'll start our collection. And hopefully everyone is now seeing our Edelweiss collection.
Yes. Oh my God, look at all your tabs you have open.
I know, no, don't look at them.
All right, thanks, Amy. So first up is Gaza Writes Back, the Memorial Edition. This is a book that probably most of you are familiar with. This has been a mainstay in bookstores with displays, highlighting titles and books on Gaza and Palestine. This The original edition came out 10 years ago in 2014, but it sold more copies this past year than all previous years combined. It's been an incredibly strong backlist seller. So this new edition, it includes the same stories. It's short stories written in English by Palestinians in Gaza, highlighting their daily lives as they strive for dignity and meaning in a community that even then was one of the world's most embattled. The stories here were written in the wake of Israel's 2008 and 2009 offensive known as Operation Cast Lead. And this hardcover memorial edition publishes on December 6th of this year, on the 1 year anniversary of the assassination of Refaat Al-Arir, the editor of this volume, who was killed in a targeted airstrike along with his brother, sister, and four of his nephews. Al-Arir is best known as a poet, mentor, and professor in English literature. And his poem, If I Die, I believe it was one of the last poems that he wrote, and that was widely circulated after he was killed and offers a message of hope to future generations of Palestinians.
Thanks, Travis. Oh, just kidding.
Oh, and we're all done.
Yep, that was just that one. I'm kidding. Hang on here. There we go. All right, this next one is one of mine, The Price of Children, and you've heard us talk about this one before, but I just wanted to mention it one more time. The Price of Children did have a 60 Minutes segment that aired on October 13th, just ahead of its on sale date of October 15th. It's been doing pretty well. I do think this will continue to gain traction. But this one is very well done investigative journalism into the Vatican's and the American Catholic Church's practice from 1950 to 1970 of essentially rounding up, talking to unwed mothers who had had babies and sending them to Catholic families in the US for adoption. In many of these instances, the mothers didn't necessarily know what they were agreeing to. The US families who adopted these children also didn't necessarily know the context of how or why these children were put up for adoption. As you can imagine, has led to a lot of heartbreak and confusion and the dismantling of families. Like I said, investigative journalism is very well done. It's sensitively handled. It does feature families, interviews with people who were directly impacted by this practice. So, definitely not a cheery story, but I think an important one, and has some really nice reviews, including from like Elizabeth Strout, the Pulitzer Prize winning author of Olive Kitteridge. We all know who Elizabeth Strout is, but as she says, like this is a book that she could not put down. It's an amazing read. It's truly fascinating, and like I said, I think pretty important to remember our history, and hopefully make changes for the better. All right, shifting gears entirely, we have Stinger, that became from Robert McCammon, who that became available on October 8th. Robert McCammon is the New York Times bestselling and Bram Stoker Award winning author. And this Stinger in particular, you might be familiar with it by another name, as it is the has been adapted into the series Teacup, which also premiered in October on Peacock. It's a pretty creepy creepy story. As you can see from Publishers Weekly, it delivers McCammon delivers terror. Philadelphia Inquirer calls it the ultimate horror novel. The Science Fiction Chronicle labels Stinger as one of the best suspense novels of recent years. And essentially, the setup here, and you can kind of see on the cover, there is it takes place in Texas, and there are two Texas towns that are kind of essentially dying due to various reasons, but they're small towns more or less at war with each other. Um, a lot of tension in the area, and in drops an alien that takes the form of kind of a human child. And there is an alien bounty hunter, Stinger, who is searching for said alien and kind of entraps these two towns under this dome. And so, you know, these towns that, like I said, didn't really get along with each other kind of have to figure out, what their priorities are, how do they survive together under this dome and Stinger. Really interesting story. And I think of fun take on horror, not fun, but fun read for sure, but a interesting take on horror in that, yes, it's aliens, yes, it's the violence of this bounty hunter, but it's also kind of looking at human nature and how we see our neighbors and the horror that can kind of just be found in that as well. So that is Stinger, and again, is directly adapted into Teacup on Peacock. That's a tongue twister, guys. Um, this next one I'm pretty excited about. I just started reading it. This is How We Know Our Time Travelers. This is a collection of short stories. It will be made of, it pubs on December 3rd. Um, it has some really nice reviews from Forward, who gave it a starred review, calling it stunning. Um, Publishers Weekly has this, gives it a great review as well, as does Kirkus. But these are just really, like I said, I just started reading it, and they're very kind of off-kilter, unsettling, but really good short stories that all kind of center around the idea of technology and climate change and love and loss and the pliability of time. So kind of the premise throughout all of these stories is that essentially time travel is almost always happening, just, but maybe not in the sci-fi way that we think of it. More about, like I said, sort of the pliability of time and how time kind of folds into certain inevitabilities. But I'm really enjoying it. The one story I just finished is about the potential of a tsunami coming, and the way throughout the story there's just these casual mentions of climate change in this very near future that feel very real. Like I said, it just kind of it's just unsettling enough, and it just kind of sticks with you. And so I'm very excited to have this one. And then I have Conversations with an Octopus. This one from Legend Press is coming out November 12th. This one is not a drop-in. However, I do think it's worth a look if you didn't see it in one of our collections previously for the fall. So Rebecca Smith is one of Jane Austen's five times great nieces, and Conversations with an Octopus takes what I would call light inspiration from Jane Austen's unfinished work, Sanditon, which I think is pretty cool, just that literary history there. Plus, I feel like just octopi are kind of having a moment here. But anyway, this particular book um, has to do with Diana Parks, who is a beautician, and she lives in, she works, what do I want to say, in Ottersea, Ocean World, where, or in Ottersea, she lives and works in Ottersea, Wisconsin, and kind of has had it up to here with the people that she has to deal with every day. And when the body of her kind of lecherous landlord washes up on the beach, the detective in the story, Jim Patton, and Grace Brown, they have to kind of solve the mystery. But meanwhile, at Ottersea Ocean World, sort of like the Sea World in this town, there's Jane the octopus. And Jane can kind of hear everything that's going on around her as she overhears people's conversations. Um, so it's a walks a fine line tonally. It's I guess I would call it sort of a dark comedy mystery. Um, but it's, cozy. It's leaning more towards the cozy mystery. But a really, I think, fun fall read. And then, um, sorry, I didn't mix this up more, so you just have to listen to me talk for a while. But we've got Going to Maine, which is all the ways to fall on the Appalachian Trail. Also not a drop-in title, but one that I really, really enjoy and think you will too. The author, Sally Brooks, this is her memoir about her doing the complete Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. And she is woefully unprepared for this journey. So this story is very much about her and her best friend and the people they meet along the way. Um, some very hilarious and sometimes a little scary predicaments that they find themselves in along the trail. Sally meets a guy and falls in love with him on the trail. So it's just a really fun memoir of perseverance, trying something new, meeting new people, being able to kind of laugh at yourself when you're, like I said, woefully unprepared for such a feat. But it's very laugh out loud, very life affirming. And for those of you who maybe have stores based up near or along the Appalachian Trail, I know it's been quite popular in those areas. So um, just giving us one more look at that one. All right. And now I'll be quiet for a little while.
And Brianna will never get to talk. Just kidding. She's got some great selections later. But this is my run. Okay. So first or second for me is Monarch. This is from Black Lawrence Press, and this is a collection of short stories from Emily John Tobias. So this, like I said, comes from Black Lawrence Press. They are a publisher new to IPG. They joined us in July of this year. Monarch published in May, so it missed our inclusion in our summer catalog. Um, but I think a lot of stores ordered it in due to her extensive book tour. That's how I became aware of it because I started seeing a lot of orders for this book that I hadn't heard of. So I was like, oh, looks really fantastic. And it is. So as I said, this is a short story collection. We've got a lot of short story collections in this collection. And they focus mainly on characters who are navigating moments of trauma or crisis, including drug addiction, abuse, neglect, poverty, but they all undergo some form of transformation through an act of love. Um, I really love her depictions of the characters in her stories. They are very well developed and have lots of depth, and each story shows people who deserve and often get a second chance, but not always a happy ending. So these stories definitely deal with some dark and heavy stuff. As I said, drug addiction, homelessness, poverty, self-abuse. But each story can also be seen as a love story, though these are love stories that ultimately deal with loss. The major themes here are death, rebirth, loss, and love with incredibly vivid and lyrical writing. I really enjoyed some of the stories in this. And I'm seeing some notes. Yes, thank you for calling that out, Matt. We have a lot of exciting publishers. Black Lawrence is great. And then also this next one from Bull City Press. This is the theme park of women's bodies from Bull City Press. They're based in Durham. They are another publisher that's new to our list. They also joined in July. I'm so excited to have them with us because they are doing some really amazing stuff. Especially Maggie Cooper's debut debut short story collection, The Theme Park of Women's Bodies. This, I just want to note, is a very short, spined chapbook collection of stories. It's only 49 pages, but the 6 stories included here pack so much into them that it seems much longer. This is weird fiction that explores how gender and the body shape our experiences of moving through the world. Maggie Cooper's writing is wryly funny and satirical, but that's not to say that these aren't serious works of fiction, because each one of them explores sort of misogynistic undertones in our society. These are also modern day feminist fables that explore issues of women's anger, like in the story Operation Hecuba, where women's rage is harnessed to power the electrical grid, as well as Freedom in the short story Our Lady of the High Seas, which asks, what does liberation look like to a young girl raised by a group of all women pirates? And the contradictions that women have to face in this title story, The Theme Park of Women's Bodies, where the tour guide who works at there's actually a theme park of women's bodies, gets paid less than her male coworkers. So that's what I have to say about that. Pick it up, order it for your store. It's a quick read. You'll love it. And next up, this is In Papers by Jonathan Strong that comes to us from Grid Books, another new publisher who joined in July. If you can guess, yes, there's a little bit of a theme to the titles that I picked. So In Papers is a collection of 2 novellas. The first one is Discourses with Donkey, and the second one is called Playful and Thoughtful. And as I said, this comes to us from Grid Books. Both of the novellas in this book explore similar themes of youth and age, and how time affects our experiences, and how we see both of those through our changing lives. The author, Jonathan Strong, is an incredible writer who presents his characters with tender care. He's been publishing for almost 60 years and just turned 80. So the first novella in this book is in Discourses with Donkeys, with Donkey, singular, and that follows a young gay man named Griffin on a work sabbatical in rural Vermont, where he encounters on one of his runs this older guy, Sam Fry, a self-described crotchety old geezer who speaks like a country bumpkin half of the time and like a college professor the other half. Over their time together and their meetings, they challenge each other's preconceived ideas about one another, and each character learns deep life lessons from the other. And just to note, there's also a really charming donkey named Hank who appears as a character. And the other story, Playful and Thoughtful, tells the story of 2 older friends, William and Benjamin. One is playful, one is thoughtful. They are both gay men in their 80s who previously had been lovers but have settled into a friendship. And the novella follows them as they live together in their old age. They've both retired to a seaside community where they navigate the COVID-19 pandemic and explore memories of their youth as they try to fill their days with the days of their later lives. So that is In Papers. And next up is Philosophy of the Home. This is not a drop-in. It was included in my collection. I kind of didn't pay this enough attention, I think, at the beginning, but started seeing some orders for it and picked it up and gave it a read and really enjoyed it. So this is comes to us from PRH UK. This is a philosophical exploration of the home by Emmanuel Cochia. And it looks at the home not just as a collection of rooms where we live our lives, but as spaces that shape our psyches and our culture. To be completely honest, some of this did go completely over my head, but there's some really great gems in this book. It's written as a series of brief essays on a wide range of topics that he kind of relates to the home. So pets, there's a chapter on twins and twinship. He is a twin. And writing, he compares the act of writing to the act of homemaking and making the space that you live in an actual home. And he shows how each of these subjects relates to home and homemaking. making. This is a playful but challenging work that's also a quick read that spurs deeper thought. It made me think a lot deeper about how I decorate my living space, about who and how I share my space with, and how I use my home as a place to reconnect to myself and find happiness. There's also, just anecdotally, a really fantastic chapter on bathrooms and how they create a sort of separate space inside a home. And he talks about this uncanny experience where he lived in an apartment in Berlin that had a shower in his kitchen and how unsettling that experience was. It reminded me of that episode of Seinfeld where Kramer is like washing his salad in the shower. It's like so disgusting, but anyway. And it also has a really charming cover by artist and illustrator Chris Ware. So how can you go wrong? And next up, this is House of Hearts by Francesca Leah Block. House of Hearts is her newest book. She's best known as the author of the young adult Weetzie Bat books. This is beautiful, dreamy, and strange. It's a retelling of the Egyptian myth of Isis and Osiris, and it follows the protagonist Izzy Ames as she goes in search of her lover Cyrus Rivera after he vanishes without a trace one morning. Izzy and Cyrus have been lovers since high school, and they find solace from their past traumas together. When she realizes that no one will help her, Izzy takes matters into her own hands and decides to search for Cyrus alone. After weeks for looking for him, she discovers a clue that leads her to the House of Hearts Retreat Center. While she's there, she meets a mysterious musician named Ever Fontana, and for a moment, she's able to forget the pain of her past. But when new clues about Cyrus's disappearance surface, Izzy must go down into the dark to find the truth. This is set in the bleak desert world of the Salton Sea, and it features Block's signature Southern California brand of magical realism. Speaking of Stephen Graham Jones, which we're going to do a lot in this session, he blurbed this book and said the desert is alive with story, with terror, with myth, with wonder, and Francesca Leo Block has planted a house of hearts there. Come in if you dare, but you might not make it back out. It was also blurbed by Amy Bender, who called it a lushly sensory page turner that will satisfy Block fans and create new ones. So really excited to have this on our list. And next up, and my last title, you won't hear from me until the end. This is S/HE. The publisher presented this to us last week, and she noted that any way that you say this title is fine. You can call it Shahi, but S/HE, I'm going to follow what she did. This is a reprint of Minnie Bruce Pratt's memoir, which was originally published in 2005, but has been out of print since 2012. And this comes to us from Sinister Wisdom Press as part of their Sapphics Classics series, which are reprints of classic books by lesbian feminist authors, as well as original titles by authors who have been central to shaping lesbian feminism. This is also a newer publisher to us that also joined us in July. So Pratt wrote S/HE in the early 1990s when she met and fell in love with feminist trans activist Leslie Feinberg. Feinberg, I hope that you know who they are, was the author of Stone Butch Blues and Transgender Warriors, and was one of the early influential theorists and historians as historians of trans experience. The love story between Feinberg and Pratt is extraordinary, and much of it is captured in S/HE. It also focuses on Pratt's exploration of her own gender and sexuality and how ideas of masculinity and femininity have influenced her throughout her life. She talks a lot about what it means to be a good woman versus a bad woman, or a good lesbian versus a bad woman. And she also talks about what it means for a woman who identified as a lesbian to be in a relationship with a masculine presenting person. This is just a fantastic and intriguing look at early modern lesbian and trans history, especially as it was practiced by Pratt and Feinberg. This is also another quick and easy read. Small chapters, each very like a poetic little uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Little story, little nugget. That'll be it. Yeah.
All right, it's finally my turn to talk. Thanks for letting me speak, guys. So first up, we have The Way of the Gladiator by Daniel P. Mannix. And so this was originally published a while ago as Those About to Die. So this is excellent narrative nonfiction about the history of the Roman games, and it served as inspiration for the original Gladiator and also as inspiration for the upcoming Gladiator that is coming out in November. So this was a drop-in from earlier this month in October, meant to time around the movie coming out soon. And this one, we have seen a spike in interest with it alongside the movie trailer becoming really popular. But the Los Angeles Times said, if you can imagine a superior American sports writer suddenly being transported back in time to cover the ancient Roman games, you will have some idea of the flavor and zest of The Way of the Gladiator. Which I love the idea of a sports writer telling us all about the history of the ancient Roman games. So it breaks down the history, planning, and savage pageantry of the games, going century by century and putting the games in the context of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. And that was The Way of the Gladiator. And then next up, we have La Vie de Guinevere. And this one, I think, just came out yesterday, actually. And so this is one that also kind of flew under the radar at IPG. And we noticed it because we actually had stores reaching out to us because the author was reaching out to them. And so La Vie de Guinevere is a time-traveling Arthurian romantasy, and it is about a modern day woman, Vera, who is just working her normal job when one day Merlin shows up, tells her that she is actually Queen Guinevere, and takes her back to the 7th century in which she has to save King Arthur and Camelot. And so this book is actually published by an author who started a Kickstarter in order to fund the publication of this book and do an off-cent print run. So she raised over $65,000 on Kickstarter to support this book, which is the highest amount raised by a debut author. And there is a huge social media presence built around this book. She has over 56,000 followers on TikTok and 27,000 followers on Instagram. And her most viewed video on TikTok about this book has 12 million views on it. So it's got a really big social media following behind it. She's also negotiated foreign and audio rights already, and they've hired a PR team for outreach, and they're big on doing events. So this one has a big social push behind it, and I don't know how you can go wrong with the phrase time traveling Arthurian romantasy. In This Ravishing World, this is a collection of short stories from Regal House by Nina Schuyler. And so this one was not a drop-in, but I feel like it flew under the radar a bit, and I really love this one. And I've actually seen some really steady reorders for this one. So I wanted to highlight it as something that's been doing well. But this is a collection of short stories, and it was published by Regal House as part of their W.S. Porter Prize, which is their annual short story competition. And this is a collection of stories about nature and climate change. So they are meant to be really emphatically human and make you care about climate change. This is the book where if you have somebody who isn't believing the numbers about climate change, this is meant to kind of get into their heart and make them feel that they need to be doing something about climate change. So the narrators really vary. You have a scientist, a ballet dancer, nature, but they all really circle around this idea of climate change is here, and the only way we're going to be able to do something about it is if we all work together. So they are very much like stories that will just kind of like climb inside you and make you feel things. But it's a really excellent one, I think, very topical with the climate change theme. And next up, Stephen Graham Jones is back again because he is the other theme of today. So this is a drop-in that will be publishing in December for Sterling City. This one was originally published back in 2014 and is a short novella. It was Jeff Vandermeer called this another great reason that you need to read Stephen Graham Jones. And his blurb was that it is mesmerizing, horrifying, strange, and you can't put it down. which I think is really fantastic. But I love that the description for this book on Stephen Graham Jones's website starts off, "A moon explodes and a marriage dies." And so in this short novella in Texas, a Martian moon has exploded and space debris is raining down. And at the same time, this farmer in Texas isn't too much affected by it, but his wife has just left him. And so he's just trying to figure out how to get rid of, all the weevils and things like that in his ground until he all of a sudden finds that there is a giant space caterpillar there and more space stuff is starting to fall in his yard. So this is a nice short novel from Stephen Graham Jones, and very excited to have this one back in print. And Here Be Leviathans. So this is from University of Queensland Press, which does a lot more academic titles or reprints of Indigenous Aboriginal authors. So they're kind of not too well known, but they had a couple of really great fiction titles this year. And Chris Flynn, if you have seen me at any event, you may have heard me going on about how much I love this book about Mammoth by Chris Flynn. But he is a really humorous author who likes to write from non-human perspectives. And so Here Be Leviathans is a fantastic, humorous short story collection that is all about the absurdity and the wild things that humans do from the perspective of non-human characters. So, one of these narrators is a monkey being trained to go into space. His name is Hamlet, by the way. He's very aware of everything that's happening and wants these humans to just start figuring science out the way he has. But he's talking about the absurd things humans are doing with him to send him into space. My favorite was one narrated by a saber-toothed tiger in a, ice age park where humans can go and pretend to be there in the ice age again and be hunted by these saber-toothed tigers. But really, he just wants to hang out with his new saber-toothed tiger chick that he just met and have their quiet date night together. So they're really funny, absurd stories that also just kind of stop and make you look and be like, humans do some really weird things sometimes.
Brianna, I don't mean to interrupt, but this was not planned, but this is the shirt that I'm wearing today.
Yes.
From the Leviathan bookstore in St. Louis.
All right. Devil's Island. This was not a drop in, but it's been the one that I haven't been able to stop talking about either. But Devil's Island, I sat down to, read a chunk of it just so I could get a feel for it. And then I did not want to put it down, and I was almost late for work that morning because I just really had to figure out who was killing all these people. But Devil's Island is set on a remote island off of the coast of New Zealand. And the main character is emotionally burnt out from rehabilitating Tasmanian devils. So she takes a very casual job leading hikers into this remote wilderness. But on her first tour, she leads 6 guests in and only comes out with 2 of them. And when the bodies start turning up, you start learning that there are a lot more connections between all of these seemingly unrelated people who just went on this tour guide group. So this one is fantastic for the character development, keeping the tension and unraveling all the ways that people know each other and the secrets that are being hidden. It came out from Ocean View Publishing, and this is actually the debut writing collaboration between the husband and wife team of Midge Raymond and John Yunker, both of whom have also published things independently. So this one was a really fantastic mystery, and I love the setting being on this island in off of New Zealand where there are Tasmanian devils.
Oh, okay. This one is from NBM. Kids Are Still Weird, and More Observations from Parenthood, from Jeffrey Brown. This one, not a drop-in. It just came out a little earlier this month on October 15th. But I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention today just because I feel like this is one that has gotten a little lost, but anytime I present it, people are like, oh, yes, instantly. How did I miss this? Jeffrey Brown, you might be familiar with already. He was the best-selling author and illustrator of like Darth Vader and Son and oh, what was the Jedi Academy? I know when I was a bookseller, like we could not keep those in stock. But this one, Kids Are Still Weird, also follows the same kind of signature Jeffrey Brown's humor and style, but this is all about essentially all of the funny and weird and sometimes brutally honest things that young children say and do around their parents. It is kind of in, again, like I said, sort of that comic book style. Lots of just really fun humor, very relatable. Um, and very surprisingly kind of as kids at this age can be um just like very some like acute inner wisdom here to really kind of make you think of who you are and the meaning of life even sometimes but still, weird. Kids are still weird, as the title suggests. I think this um obviously is a fun gift for anyone who knows kids, young or old, whether they're parents or teachers, or aunts and uncles even, but also a fabulous, fabulous gift for new parents, or parents of young children. Just a really, really fun one. And like I said, for whatever reason, is hiding at least a little bit in my collection, apparently. But whenever I bring it up, it's an instant, yes, I'll take 3 or 4, and it's doing quite well. So, just trying to give this a slightly larger audience. All right, this next one is Flight from the Dark. This is from Home Guard Press. This was a drop-in that released late in August. And before I dive into exactly what this book is, just a little bit of information here. So, these are essentially game books, kind of a cross between like role playing, Dungeons and Dragons slash choose your own adventure. And the series originally existed in a more like YA level reading, and we have those as well that have all been repackaged so it looks like a complete unified set for those who are collectors or really into the series. But now new is are these junior editions, which are intended more for ages 7 to 9. I've heard from some that it could skew even as young as 5, with maybe some parental guidance and help. But these are really, really fun fantasy adventures, and you can play it with pencil or rolling a die, but it's not essential. You can just kind of read it and, like I said, kind of be a pick your own choose your own adventure style. But it kind of sets you up. The book will kind of walk you through like the type of player you can be, what your skills are, what your how your player can kind of move or interact with others. If you are playing with a die, if you roll 6, that's what it means when you're fighting. It explains everything. But a really, really fun. You can see how it's like if you picked 1 through 3, turn to 145. Those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s are probably very familiar with this format. Um, but it also just a really, really fun, fantastical adventure. You can reread these books multiple times and kind of pick a different character to be. So it's a lot of fun, kind of packed in one book. It also has, here's where describes the different characters. And like I said, the disciplines or skills that the character Kai has. There's also a place if you're doing this more with pencil and paper where you can kind of keep track of the items you've picked up in your backpack, your combat record, all of this. So really useful. The series, the first 5 books in the series in the junior editions are all available, all became available on August 27th. Flight from the Dark is the first in the series. These should all be kind of linked in the comps if you're following along in the collection. I had these at NEBA, and everyone kind of became obsessed with them and kind of became a child again themselves as they got excited about them. So just a really fun, fun series. So highly, highly recommend this one, especially I think it would be great holiday suggestions for gift giving. Um, and all right, and then we've got this one, I think, from Brianna.
So I just always love the chance to talk about Marv because I think this is a series that had a really slow start too. But these are a fantastic early reader illustrated series from Oxford Children's. And Marv is a little black boy superhero written because the author never got to see himself as a little black boy superhero and wanted to just see someone having fun with it. So Marvin, when he puts on his super suit that he inherited from his grandfather, becomes Marv and the superhero, and his super suit is powered by imagination and kindness. And his powers are almost always infinite as long as he can still be creative and still do the right thing and be a good person, which is a really great message. And it's a really heartwarming relationship between him and his grandfather, who was retired from being the original superhero. But in this one, the evil villain has made the class hamster supersized, and now he is running through the town and causing chaos, so Marv has to go save him. So these are really fun. It's an entertaining adventure as Marv learns good lessons about being a person, but he also has fun with his friends who don't know that he's Marv. He just disappears every time there's chaos. And one thing I love about this early reader series is that even though it is a series, the books on the spines aren't numbered and they can be read in any order. And the fact they're not numbered makes it really nice and easy for stores to tell customers that they can be read in any order. And each book is really easy to just kind of pick up and dip in by itself. So this is a really fun series that we tend to have a couple more coming out every year.
All right, and that is our collection for you today. So I'm going to stop the collection share and bring our PowerPoint back up. And let's see. Do-do-do-do. Okay. All right. So just a reminder, I know we talked about this in our last one, but this is our last online rep pick session for the year. We know obviously things are going to get really, really busy in November and December. And actually, if you stick with the same schedule of the last Wednesday of the month, that very much interferes with Thanksgiving and Christmas and holidays. So we're just going to end here for the year. But we will resume our sessions in 2025, and our newsletters will continue throughout the rest of the year.
And speaking of newsletters, you should sign up for them. We call them FYI for you indies. So you can sign up to receive IPG's bookseller newsletter, which I will drop the link to do so here. These includes our invitation to the webinars that we host, new and notable titles that we might be running a special on or just want you to know about, trade reviews of note, publisher spotlights, giveaways, available DRCs, and much, much more. We send the newsletter out once to twice a month. We really are trying not to spam you. We just want to share like things that we think that would be beneficial for you to know. And as I said, I dropped the link to sign up there.
Yes, and when we resume our webinars or these online sessions, that's where you'll see the notification of the new schedule as well. And then that's all we have for you today. So ending a little ahead of schedule. So with that being said, please let us know if you have any questions or comments or anything we can help clarify, and we'd be happy to just chat with you for a couple minutes.
And all of the information on this page is, you can find it on our bookseller landing page, which I also just dropped the link in. But thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you. Happy Halloween.
Oh, that's tomorrow.
Hmm. Okay, well, if we're all set in the chat and there aren't any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And thank you all once again for joining us. And we'll see you next year.
That's us. Bye.
It sounds really nice.